The inquiry question of to what extent were the legal systems of the Ottoman Empire the reason for its longevity?
Sharia law is an essential topic when referring to the Ottoman Empire. Sharia law had an occurrence starting from the 11th century, around the time where Islam spread over the Arab world. Around that time, it was tightly knit with legal systems. The new idea of governmental systems and legal systems closely related with religion inspired many people to obey their leaders with devotion. Using the Abbasid dynasty as an example, one of the longest lasting Islamic empires, by the way, to remain consistent and continue their rulings over time, the scholars invented a tool to be used in Sharia law. It was known as legal analogy, a system that's an example of the advancements made by the Islamic empires that use the Sharia law. Since Prophet Muhammad, Middle Eastern countries have created a set of religious laws, the sayings and deeds of the Prophet. It's the human interpretation of God's will that is applied to the set of laws. This complex system was a way for the religious scholars and political leaders to eliminate subjectiveness and encourage justice throughout all Islamic empires. Gradually, Sharia law became a way of life rather than a political system, which boosted its effectiveness. According to the BBC in an article titled Sharia, published on 3rd of September 2009, the Sharia regulates all human actions and puts them into 5 categories. The first category was obligatory, then recommended, then permitted, disliked, and then forbidden. This aspect of Sharia law was adapted to Islamic politics. The distinction made it the most effective legal system, which contributed to making the Islam empire prosper. Then, like every good empire, the Islamic empire had its decline. The Ottoman Empire rose, following the decline of the Islamic Empire around the year 1299. The leaders of the empire knew that Christians moved near the Arab world, and that the Sharia law, as it is, cannot be applicable. Therefore, it had to be reformed as a result of the difficulty to address taxation, administration, financial matters, crime, and punishment for foreigners. Sharia alone could not be used, which led the Ottoman Empire to use the Qanun, or Ottoman law. One of the most distinct features of the Ottoman law was that it had 3 court systems. There was one system for Muslims, one for non-Muslims, involving Jews and Christians, which had ruled by their respective religious communities, and finally, trade courts. The fact that the Ottoman Empire had 3 different courts shows that they made advanced reforms. The previous Islamic empires had only one major court. It had regulations that applied to the life of a Muslim. Their laws on non-Muslims existed, but they were not nearly as strict or advanced as the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans knew that Muslims were not the only people in the Arab world, and that in order to truly expand their empire, the inclusion of foreigners was a must. However, the aspect of authority on these laws was not changed. Scholars did have a presence in the Ottoman Empire. They had the authority of approving and invalidating contradictions made on religious laws. This was vital, as more contradictions occur as a result of the presence of a diversity of religions. Another change to the Sharia law was the Islamic courts were open to people of all religions. Since Islamic courts were the primary ones of the Ottoman Empire, litigants of all religions were welcome to settle a conflict in trade or an issue of some sort. Jews and Christians were included to an extent of being allowed to become local governors. When people of different religions have this much of a voice in the empire, that is truly a way to bring the citizens closer to their government, thus a successful expansion. The fact that the categories of legal courts and systems were not exclusive to anyone based on religion was a contributor to a more effective system entirely. This was unlike the legal analogy system of the Abbasid dynasty, where the categories of the Sharia law were only based on Islam and being a Muslim. Most major reforms to the present legal system occurred during the 19th century, around the 1800s, mid-1800s to be exact. There were 3 sets of codes introduced, each marking a new phase to the ideology of the Ottoman civilization. This period of reform was known as Tanzimat, or reform in Arabic. A proclamation known as the Imperial Edict of Reorganization was addressed during this time span. The new proclamation promised an abolition of tax farming, a reform in drafting or conscription, and finally a statement that the rights of all people will be guaranteed. This was a way for the Ottoman Empire to adapt to the worldwide changes as well as European laws. This tactic of modernization is not far-fetched when it comes to the Ottoman Empire. Throughout the entirety of the Ottoman Empire, their goal was to reach a successful state of Ottomanism. This can be seen dating back to the 1300s or as recently as the early 1900s. In the early 1300s, it was not referred to as Ottomanism, but the thought was still in existence. Ottomanism held that all subjects were equal to the face of the law, which was a strong reason why the Ottomans had such a powerful legal system and thus continuity over time, and because it lasted as long as they did. It was also referred to as the millet system, as the main player in this whole system was a set of independent courts of law. The old laws of utmost devotion to the Sultan no longer had a role when it came to the modern world, so the changes had to be made in order to suit the time period. Therefore, the Ottomans became a nationalist empire. This is also intertwined when we think back once again to the Qanun, or Ottoman law. Legal standardizations were problematic under Sharia law, as it relied solely on religious scholars. Modernizing Sharia law into the Ottoman law was one of the most effective tools for the prosperity of the Ottoman Empire. One of the key features of the Ottoman law was the two-tiered hierarchy that the Ottoman Empire became. It consisted of askari, or military, and the riya, meaning flock in Arabic. The military consisted of a tax-exempt ruling class which included the men of the sword and the men of the book as well as the men of the pen. The rest of the population was not tax-exempt and actually had to work in order to pay and produce taxes. Another example of the features of Qanun was the law of fratricide. This law made the Sultan required to kill all his brothers upon receiving the throne. This eliminated all conflicts related to family when a Sultan was in power. Sulayman the Magnificent was one of the most notable sultans in the Ottoman Empire. He was known as the Qanuni, which means lawgiver in Arabic. Sulayman the Magnificent lived from 1494 till 1566, dying at the age of 71, yet accomplishing so much in his lifespan. He was desirous to end religious persecution in his empire and expand it. It is known that Sulayman was a thinker. For example, he developed new strategies for conquest. It was the first time in Ottoman history where the Ottoman Empire did not use their cannons as a way of taking over. In fact, they used gunpowder in many different creative ways. They dug tunnels under the cities which they besieged. They were able to take over by setting up explosions in these tunnels. Sulayman gained the respect he deserved as the Almighty Sultan. He was a tradition establisher as well. He would walk into a courtyard of 7,000 janissaries and no one would say a word. But enough about Sulayman's image accomplishments. Let us discuss how he was relevant in reforming the legal system of the Ottoman Empire. Sulayman was single-handedly able to transform the Ottoman Empire into an economic powerhouse. Sulayman collected all the judgments that had been issued by the 9 Ottoman sultans who existed before him to ensure that the policies are at their best. After choosing between contradictory statements, he issued a single legal code. However, he had to be careful not to overthrow any Islamic laws. When the Qanun laws attained their final form, the code of laws became known as the Qanun al-Osmani, or again, Ottoman laws. Sulayman's legal code lasted for more than 300 years after him. When it came to punishment, Sulayman increased fines from crimes and reduced death penalties, which resulted in a more effective legal system for crime and therefore reduced crime rates. Taxes were imposed on goods, products, profits of trade, and import-export duties. Innovation of tax rates and legal systems were just one of many different reasons why Sulayman is considered one of the greatest sultans of all time. A good way to understand just how effective Ottoman legal systems were is observing their relevance in the modern world. Oftentimes, remarkable political breakthroughs stay remembered through time. The first example of an Ottoman law relevant to our world today is the presence of a judge in a court. Judges are people who preside over court proceedings. They had the same job when looking back at the Ottoman Empire. They had to be fair and eliminate their bias when ruling over a case. Ottoman judges had to put aside the religions of the litigants and rule based on the case. A judge could not simply choose a Muslim as the one who is right. Rules and regulations had to take place. Seeing such a unification of religions in one prosperous empire is not uncommon. However, seeing legal systems applied to eliminate any favoritism is not very common, and is another distinction of the systems belonging to the Ottoman Empire. Finally, the Ottoman Empire had multiple courts, moving from just having one. A system of complex legal courts that take a decision together is much more fair when looking at the enforcement of laws. Therefore, the event of seeing Ottoman laws modernized into what we see in our world today is evidence of just how effective these systems were and thus leading to its longevity.